This is the On Step Alaska podcast, where we talk all things outdoors and life in the last frontier. I'm your host, Jeff Lund, coming to you from Southeast Alaska. Thanks for listening, and if you enjoyed, please feel free to share. If you want a deeper dive into everything from hunting and angling to education and conservation, head over to From the 49th, my Substack page, or order my new book, Big Wild Life. Now let's get started. All right, Dan Kirkwood, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jeff.
So you're up in Juneau, I'm down here in Ketchikan, and you've been getting all the snow, I've been getting all the rain, and I look at the top of the mountains and I think, man, we don't have a whole lot of snowpack, and I automatically think of the river levels for the fish. It's hard to not think about ecosystem once you get kind of past you grew up here, you go to high school here, and you think about fishing, but you don't think about the ecosystem, and now I'm just deep in it. I just think about all these different things, and it just worries me a whole lot. But that's kind of your job, is to worry about these ecosystems and to worry about populations and everything. So how did you get into your position there at SalmonState?
Oh man. Yeah. Thanks. It's interesting. You're thinking about the fish in the summer. I'm thinking about the deer too, right? And
Yeah.
that's the other piece of winter snow that we all think about. I'm working for Salmon State right now. I'm doing conservation policy work with the National Forest Management, and I've gotten into that work through a long history of working in tourism, working for the Forest Service on tourism issues. Got my start in tourism here when I first moved up here. And yeah, when we're thinking about forest management, we're thinking about habitat and making sure we've got habitat for fish and deer. I mean, that's kind of my animating concern when it comes to forest management. A lot of the folks I work with bring a lot of other focuses as well, thinking about the longstanding cultures of Southeast Alaska and how we're going to represent those in forest management. Really cool work there. But yeah, it's interesting. We've switched over to rain here too, and I can't believe how warm it is and that the 4 feet of snow in our yard is gone. But we had I'm sure you saw, people were shoveling off their roofs.
Yeah.
My deck is totally screwed. And so when that was going on, me and my buddies, everyone was talking about how are the deer doing right now. And I was thinking, man, when we talk about forest management, we talk about the importance of the forest as deer habitat. And I was like, all right, I got to go out and do this experiment. So I drove out North Douglas here in Juneau, and went out into a muskeg at 200 feet, right? Really low. And just did a video just to say okay, here's an opening. Here's this is a muskeg or a clear cut or something. Snow is 4 feet deep. No way a deer's getting through that. And then I went into just a nice stand of mature forest, and 4 inches, 6 inches. In places a 1.5 feet, but nothing that would trouble even a young deer. That was a really interesting illustration, right, of how these big questions of habitat, really matter for these critters that we like to chase. And
Yeah.
Now, I mean, you talk then about fish, and if there's no snow in the hills, that's interesting, right? We're thinking about the difference between our big mainland rivers, our big glacially fed rivers versus our island streams. Big part of the diversity here.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, so I'd be curious, down in Ketchikan, in Juneau, we always think of Ketchikan as having better hunting and fishing than Juneau.
I think it is. I don't think that's wrong. Well, I think it's, you look at Juneau and the mountains rise just right up from the ocean. So I think when people come up here on the cruise ships, they see Ketchikan as kind of a disappointment, maybe like a Seattle North or, not really Seattle North, but, more of a Washington type feel. And once you start getting up to the Juneau area, you get more of those monolithic faces, much more extreme habitat. You get glaciers around. So We have a lot more of that flatland, bunch of smaller islands. The alpine is different, so you can get up to the alpine a lot easier. You don't have we do have some like mountain goat type territory, but yeah, the deer populations down here are fantastic. Whereas around there, it doesn't seem like it's quite as good. And then also the access. We have a lot of old logging roads. Short skiff ride. You can kind of get away from people. A lot more inlets and whatnot. So I think that's what really helps us. But we do get a lot of snow, so or a lot of rain rather than the snow. So I think that that makes a difference too for populations and some of that winter kill and stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, totally. That makes sense.
So what is your role when you're looking at these habitat things? Like, so what does SalmonState do as far as advocating for, doing research? What does that look like when you're looking at those ecosystems and the habitat?
Yeah, I see my job as it's a bit of a synthesizer. Um, when we're looking at the studies, the reports that scientists are doing, the research that our colleagues are doing, we're trying to understand how to fit that into like good programs, good plans for forest management. But when you make a plan, when you're doing that sort of work, you're moving from the science into the politics. And politics is the mess of people coming together with different opinions. It's the way people come together. Sometimes it's beautiful, sometimes it's messy. Um, yeah, so my role as a synthesizer is to work with, understand that research, and then work with the people whose needs relate to that. To work with if it's hunters and anglers or if it's tourism businesses. And a lot of the work that I do is around tourism management as well, because that's really where our economy is in the region these days. And when we're looking at the management of the national forest, I think a big question that people are having around their dinner tables is, where's this economy going? Sometimes that's, like specific to fish and wildlife. The evolution of our sport fishing, sport hunting. But then other times it's sort of just the broader world of tourism management.
Mm-hmm.
That circles back around to habitat when we talk about what are the big priorities going to be. Right now, Forest Service on the verge of starting a big new planning effort, and the opportunity here is to have a plan that really meets Southeast where it's at today.
Mm-hmm.
Gets us kind of in line with where our economy is responsive to what people in Southeast want to do. And then certainly, like the Tongass National Forest is a long time place of controversy about, mainly focused on timber.
Yeah.
And the question is like, how much are we going to focus on that? Where's the economy going in the next 15 plus years?
Yeah. Yeah. The 70s and 80s, well, actually, in the 50s when Ketchikan Pulp Mill started up, it's just massive amounts of logging. And then Prince of Wales, I grew up in Kilwaukee, Prince of Wales, and it wasn't just the Tongass that was being logged. You had corporation logging. See, Alaska was logging a lot. Village Corporation, state, that was a major part of the industry. Thorn Bay, Craig, Kilwaukee, all those communities, Kaufman Cove benefited dramatically from having that economy. But in logging that old growth is now not there. You can't grow 900-year-old trees back in 30, 40 years. And so thinking that we can get back to the 1980s economy, it's not possible. The oil prices are down, and in Southeast Alaska, the timber just isn't there, and it's going to be way more expensive to get back to it. It can be difficult to kind of have that conversation, because if you know people who are loggers or are dependent on that, you don't want to say, I don't want your kid to have food anymore because I don't think logging is,
right,
but it's a tough conversation, and we don't really, balance doesn't really exist. It's more like trade-offs. And so if we're trading one thing for another, one resource for another, and that's such a tough thing on the economy, because ultimately you have to make a decision that someone's not going to 100% like. And, if we could transition to maybe more of the second growth logging, but that's not as valuable. So that's a really tough thing to look at going forward. Like you said, in the next 15 years, where we go, and a lot of it is the tourism.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd be super curious about your perspective on the tourism that seems to be evolving on Prince of Wales Island. Ketchikan is clearly a place that has a big cruise ship hub like Juneau. Um, the economy on Prince of Wales super different, but now there's a cruise ship dock there. They're going to have like 60 something port calls this year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Folks are going to be looking for stuff to do, and I don't know, you know that place better than I do. I'm curious what
Yeah.
you think about it.
I remember I was, man, second or third grade or something, and there used to be a pretty small cruise ship. I think it was called the North Star that came into Klawock. And they tendered in just a couple times, but there was no like tourism infrastructure. And so for the people off the boat, it was, you're seeing an authentic Southeast Alaska community.
Hmm.
It's not like 1890s sort of or 1790s or indigenous type, but you're seeing a predominantly native community as it
Hmm.
stands today. I think that was interesting for some people, but didn't have the appeal of some of the other bigger ports. So now with cruise ships coming in, it's a conflicting thing because without the industry, I know the Colwack High School is a half, if not less, than it was when I was in high school. The other schools are drying up because along with the logging leaving, also you had the Forest Service that had a big presence in Thorn Bay, and Craig is not what it was, and trying to attract young families to the community when there's no daycare and there's no infrastructure, it's hard to convince some people to go there. So by bringing in tourism, you could bring in money, you could bring in jobs, but then everything that Prince of Wales hated about Ketchikan, it's like, well, what do we do? We got to crowd our rivers, we got to do this, and it's a trade off.
Ah, man. So I've got a project that I'm working on that's very related to this, and we've been doing some interviews with people about conflicts, opportunities, about those trade-offs, and yeah, man, the tourism in Juneau doesn't have to be like what your tourism looks like in a small community, but when you think about like what is it about Alaska that people want to like experience? Um, it's those things that we have that are amazing,
Mm-hmm.
It's the Thorn River, it's the fishing, it's it's these hunting experiences that you can't have anywhere else. I'm not saying like there's a deer on every knoll, I would wish. Um, right, but like I grew up in Pennsylvania and the like tree stand hunting scene is like a
Mm.
different scene.
Yeah, yeah, a
Uh,
lot of patience.
oh man, okay, so when I was in school, I was tree stand hunting in the suburbs around Washington, D.C. I went to school there,
You go to
and
GW?
I did.
Nice. My brother went to school there, played basketball.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, they got a good basketball team. They did when I was there,
Mm.
which was a long time ago now, which is funny, but probably just funny for me. I was sitting in this tree stand watching, like planes come in down the river, listening to the local marching band practice,
Mm.
and like watching a fox sneak around or something, and thinking like, this is awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, I'm moving to Alaska.
Mm. Yeah, inside the Beltway is pretty cool. You get on the GW Parkway and just forest, and it's just nice, and you can walk through, and you got the Potomac River. Once you get close to the Potomac River in like the DC area, you probably wouldn't want to swim in it, but
I
there's
have.
nice areas,
I
and that
would.
can be your exposure to the outdoors in Alaska. Obviously, is that without the Beltway and all that, but
But to get back to my point, right? Like, sorry about my digression there. You get on the plane in Seattle in July. Those dudes are going fishing. Like the
right,
plane is full of dudes going fishing. Um, how many more flights a day from Seattle are there in the summer just because of dudes going fishing?
right,
It's huge. I worked for a long time for Alaska Seaplanes running a bear viewing tour, and those float planes all fall. Deer hunters, deer hunters, deer hunters, bear hunters, deer hunters. Um, the question is like, how do we get people onto a world-class experience that meets their expectation of Alaska, um, without ruining it for ourselves?
yeah,
And so, a big part of our tourism. work is trying to think about like that kind of where are we going to build these trails? Where are we going to put these people? Um, it's I think it's fun to think about, because I also made my living in tourism and I think it's a good living. It's cool to show people this stuff. But I'm also just very aware of the sensation of being like, get out of my yard, please.
Yeah, yeah. Every summer, you see people post on Facebook pictures of fish boxes that are head south,
Hmm.
and you can't help but wonder how much of that gets freezer burned. And for the local person who might not be able to go out, they don't have a bottomless gas tank and endless money to get their boat all the way out there to the best water to fish. It can be pretty aggravating to see how that fish head south, and then the increased notoriety of the hunting in southeast. So more people are coming up, and sometimes they put money into the economy, sometimes they bring all their stuff up, and it's just kind of minimal, and it's tough. But I think that people who kind of live here and can see both sides, I think, are going to come with the best ideas going forward, because you can sit there and you can state the problems over and over and over again, but okay, what are the solutions, right? Yeah, it can be frustrating. This is unfortunate, but this is the reality. And what are some good ideas going forward, rather than just criticize tourists, criticize people who are making a living in tourism rather than something else? We need to have good ideas too.
I think that's spot on, man. The question is like, how do we make it work for us? And it does, and we get a huge amount of benefits from the guided sport fishing in terms of jobs and local inputs. But how do we make those more local jobs? How do we make those, the hunting guides, those, lot of locally owned businesses. Hats off to those dudes. Um, yeah, I hear that frustration. I don't think that frustration's wrong either with the fish boxes, and so something to think about.
Mhm.
I also recognize, right, like I go home to Pittsburgh or something at the holidays, and you meet some friend of your parents, and they're like, "Oh, I always want to go up there and fish. That's just like that's got to be the best." And you're like, "Yeah, it's great." You know?
So, what are some of the things that Salmon State has done in Southeast Alaska? You had some films that came out. What are some of the action things that you're looking at advocating for in Southeast?
Yeah, thanks for asking, man. This program at Salmon State is something new that we developed when I came back over from the tourism world from my for-profit days and um, joined up with this great team of folks. And right now, the work has really been about making the Forest Service work for local communities, and then as we've gone into a forest planning effort, it's been advocating for various things, bringing people to that process. My colleagues before that stayed involved in things like the roadless rule. Um, Otherwise, Salmon State is a statewide Alaska-based organization that keeps track of a few salmon habitat issues around the state. Um, right now, our primary focus is this land management plan. So there, I don't think I could bring up a like less interesting concept than forest planning. So all I'm going to say about it is the current plan, by and large, is from 1997. There's some good, there's some updates in 2008, and then a very minor update in 2016. All of those years are a long time ago. They're supposed to be updated every 15 years. A forest plan is simply the things the Forest Service does and where they do them.
Mhm.
It's a zoning document for the forest. Um, and the sorts of things we want to see here are we want to make sure we still have great deer habitat and good salmon habitat throughout the forest, particularly in the southern Tongass, where a lot of the habitat impacts with logging are. Um, and then we also, by and large, sort of eclipsing our conservation specific um, perspective is we want an economy, a forest plan that meets like our economy where it is today. And again,
Mhm.
that's that that's that tourism component, making tourism work for us so we're not shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough thing about any sort of government entity. When it was originally created in the like very early 1900s, the Forest Service was about managing conservation,
Hmm.
um, you know, making effective use of it. Now, because the bureaucracy is so huge, you have people in DC making decisions, and it's like the higher up people. So it's not like the five people here in Southeast Alaska making decisions about the Tongass. It's local and then regional, and then it expands in these ever growing rings that you're trying to convince, and everything just comes down. So if you have someone who works for the Forest Service, like my wife, um, if people like complain to her, but it's like, no, like all this stuff is directed from the top. And so when you don't have funding, and one of the reasons why, like the amount of roads that were going in for the logging, there was not enough money to maintain them. And so massive backlog of all that. And, at every 4 years, things can, or maybe 8 years at the most, swings back and forth, and so you never really get a plan that is fully instated, fully implemented, and then fully executed. You just kind of get this whoever happens to be in charge at this point who doesn't have that the finger on the pulse locally, and it can be really frustrating because what makes sense for us isn't going to make sense for federal forest in California or the needs of people in Montana. And it's certainly not a one size fits all thing. And that can be a really frustrating thing.
It totally can. And I think the folks, by and large, that I know working for the Forest Service in Southeast are like great.
Right.
And, the amount of, especially when you've got someone really like tied into their community, knows the place. That's really fantastic to have. And I know it's frustrating. Yeah, I have a friend who works there who is like, if you think you're frustrated working with us, imagine working here.
Yeah. Right.
Which I was like, okay, fair point. Um, I think we're having a really interesting conversation in the country right now about like, um, we have these really good ideas like we want to protect endangered species and we want to make the Forest Service think about projects before they implement them and give us public comment. And um, yeah, I think it's good to have a conversation about making sure those work, but also not getting rid of those things and just having things come down from the top.
Yeah.
And yeah, that happens. We're getting a lot of pressure to get back into logging right now. As you pointed out, there's economic concerns there. Um, but yeah, again, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that into the future we're going to have outstanding hunting and fishing for the people who live here,
Yeah.
and an economy that we can live here with.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking for.
My like
Um,
ideal, and I don't run this by my wife or anything. She doesn't make like big time decisions. She's not in the forestry division. But my ideal Forest Service we'd have more cabins. The cabins would be kept up. There would be fuel in the cabins. Most of them were converted to like heating oil, and now they're back to
mhm.
firewood. But that would be the main thing. We do some management. There'd be some retooling of some of the mills, so they would be able to cut second growth. I know the old growth is much more valuable, but most of the accessible stuff was already cut, and it's going to be expensive to get back there. And a lot of that stuff, like, yeah, you need it for music wood, but you don't need a billion board feet of old growth for that's a lot of Steinway pianos, right? So how can we make it work to where we can get Steinway pianos, we can keep mills in business. So, but it's just those sort of
I,
conversations don't happen, I think, at the federal level.
no, no, they're looking more to prove a point,
Yeah.
and represent a point of view. I'm with you. Yeah, I don't own a lot of Steinway pianos, but I do like going to cabins. Um, our cabin program in the Tongass needs as much love, right? Like, I don't know what the situation down there. When I've seen the data around cabins, they are used essentially not every night, right? But functionally every night cabins are full.
Hmm.
Like if a cabin is accessible from a community, Thursday to Monday, solid, and then most weekday nights. Um, so if you're in, everyone's like government should act more like a business. All right, well if you had an asset like that that was being used that hard, you'd be like, we should invest in more of those.
Right.
Senator Murkowski got us a bunch of money for some new cabins. They've been slowly starting to build some. Yeah, the cap Southeast is like kind of rainy for tent camping.
Yeah, it
Uh,
is.
and cabins rule.
Yeah, it's unique too. Like you don't have this amount of cabins just sprinkled around the Western United States. It's so awesome to be able to have this stuff.
Yeah, I would love to hear from you what's a typical what's your main kind of cabin experience? Here in Juneau, I would think about something on the road system that's like a 2 hour to 3 hour hike, maybe an hour to two. I might be remembering wrong. Something like John Muir cabin, Dan Moeller cabin. Maybe it's a ski-in cabin in the winter to do some backcountry skiing, or that would sort of be like your classic cabin experience here. Um, and I've also had some great remote hunting cabin experiences. But like, what in Ketchikan are you getting on a boat? Are there some cabins on the road system? What's the deal for you guys?
There are a few on the road system. Same thing with Prince of Wales. But when I think of them now, I think of a short skiff ride or maybe an hour or two, absolute tops on a boat or
Hmm.
fly-in. So there's some in the Misties that I really want to go to, and that would be a fly-in job. But yeah, so it takes some money to get back in there, and the flyouts are a lot more expensive than they used to be. But yeah,
Hmm.
what an incredible use! It's conservation at a T. We're going to use it, and rather than just preserve it to where no one gets to access it, no one gets to set foot on it. You can't cut down a blueberry bush. It's let's use this in a way that benefits the people. It's fantastic. And then okay, we need some logging, so let's figure out some logging. Um, are people somewhat receptive, or do you guys get shot down a lot, or are people trying to figure out where you sit politically? Because sometimes if they look at a website and they see that you state one thing, then they think that you're an environmentalist or that you're a right winger or whatever. Like, how do people approach, or how do people respond to you when you're approaching businesses or entities or getting involved in some of these issues?
Interesting question. I'm a greenie, man. I'm a big greenie. I'm here working for the critters and the deer. I think of my work in conservation as like kind of my this is a little corny, right? But like my duty to the deer. There's a line I don't know if you ever read this cat named Tom Egwene.
Oh yeah.
Um, Tom Egwene has a line in one of his short stories, and someone's like, "Would you give your life for a deer?" He's like, "Yeah, if it came to that." And
Yeah.
I don't know. I've been thinking about death too much, maybe, but yeah, that concept of hunting is like such a personal, an intense experience, but like taking a life, like that duty that you then have to deer is what drives my interest in thinking about habitat and doing the work. Um, but the work itself, like how does politics come into that? I mean, my own way of approaching it is to say, I mean, with anybody you're working with, it's about a relationship and about asking a question of like, what do you need? Like, what are you looking for? And do we have a shared interest here that's maybe very closely aligned, or it's super tangential? But I can't ask you to do something that goes against your interests.
Mhm.
But if I can find a way that our interests can move together, that's how I'm going to do my work. And I work with plenty of Republicans and Democrats and lefties and righties, and I don't really ask about folks' politics.
Yeah. Yeah, you made a great point because you said I'm a greenie. And then you talked about deer and hunting. And I think that's what so many people are. I think to be an outdoors person, to be a hunter and an angler, you kind of have to be an environmentalist. But environmentalist is a term that is almost derogatory to hunters and anglers because an environmentalist is the person who doesn't fish and doesn't hunt and wants hunting to be banned, and that's not it. A hunter and an angler should be concerned about the ecosystem, but sometimes we get fixated on these words or these terms, and so we automatically turn ourselves off, or we're combative to people that we shouldn't be combative. They are approaching this topic in good faith and let's have a conversation, rather than I saw this word on your website, oh, and you're a greenie, so that means that you're this, and then you don't get anywhere. So then we can't work together. We can't figure out these problems because it's so politicized, and that's got to be a frustrating position for you to be in because people might just shut down and not even want to work together.
Yeah, I think that can happen. The way I described going about it is how I think I try to do my work as honestly and straightforward as I can, say what I'm here to do. What am I trying to achieve for conservation
Mm.
up front and see how we can work together and move forward from there.
Mm.
Yeah.
What are some other issues or things that are on Salmon State's radar?
Man, I've got a bunch of great colleagues who I don't get to work with closely enough, and I might not do them justice here, representing some of those. Um, but colleagues here in Southeast Alaska who are paying attention to our big rivers that come out of Canada, um, and thinking about the mining that's going on in British Columbia. Um, I have folks who are thinking about trawl bycatch of our salmon out in the ocean. Um, and then a lot of what folks are doing is helping out people with capacity and helping them understand how to take their concerns with wild salmon habitat into the policy arena. So, offering assistance and supporting um, tribal coalitions, supporting others who just might need some assistance on the big bad world of policy.
Mm-hmm. It might not be your wheelhouse, but is there a pretty good, I guess, open relationship or talking communication going on between Southeast Alaska and Canada as far as fish going by us to get up there to spawn? Because their habitat is crucial. Because without their
Hmm.
habitat, we wouldn't have fish coming back to the Unuk or Taku or Stikine because that's where they have to spawn. So is there a pretty good communication between us and Canada?
Well, I'll start right off by saying it's not my wheelhouse, and so my colleagues will have to offer their takes. But I think it's been a challenge. This is a very difficult um, issue for us here in Southeast, right? Because we're talking not just to our own elected government, we're talking to another government
But we are talking,
outside
right?
our country.
We are talking.
Uh, I know that they have been working on this for years, but I also know those mines are moving ahead at a rapid pace, and there's a
Hmm.
lot of concerns after, when you see something like Mount Poly happen, um, that was a really big wake up call for me. I don't
Hmm.
think I really understood the scale of that development that's gone on in British Columbia on the other side of Southeast Alaska.
Hmm. Yeah, it's such a tricky one, and it's hard enough to within your own community figure out the dynamics of how the habitat's going to be used or how many cruise
Hmm.
ships we can have per summer or whatever. Then you add in another country, then that's a whole different thing there.
Yeah.
Have you been up to
Yep.
Unuk or Stikine or Taku or any of those places?
The time I've spent the most is up the Taku, right around the corner from Juneau. I have spent a little bit of time in BC on the Upper Stikine, which was super cool. Um, but I haven't floated those rivers. Um, Isn't it like we don't think of Southeast as like a river place, but we have these world-class rivers. Um, of course, there's like people in Juneau who are like the whole jet boat scene,
Right.
um, and they get after it on the Taku. Um, I've had a few adventures on those rivers, but not as much on like the Unic. I know. Have you ever talked to a cat named Laverne Byer? Um,
No.
okay, Laverne is an old fish and game biologist and bear hunting guide who, like in the 70s, trapped up the Unic
Hmm.
and has incredible stories about like a grizzly named Old Growler. Like great stuff. Um, but yeah, I mean, right back up in there where you're, just buried in snow the whole winter. Incredible stories.
Yeah, the Unic I've been to the mouth of. I haven't really gone up it. Went up the Stikine a little bit with some friends. We just took a jet boat out of Wrangell up to the border and then
Okay.
floated down, which was super cool. But yeah, like you said, we don't have the access to these rivers. There's no way to drive to it, so it's a chore to get back in there and then go up it. But we reap the benefits of having that habitat up those rivers because that means the fish come right by us. But yeah, it would be nice if it was easier to get back there. But of course, access brings traffic, and it'd be pretty expensive to get back there. But yeah, there's some awesome places here in Southeast that would be great to get back into.
Yeah, I think there's something, like the Taku is like some, monster coho producer, right? And like the Sticky, these are like rivers why we have king salmon around here. Awesome stuff. Um, on the access front, my wife's parents floated the Stikine out of Juneau. They flew like they flew like direct to tell. I think they maybe
Hmm,
stopped somewhere on the way for gas, but can you imagine this? A beaver out of Juneau to access a full Stikine River trip? Like,
man.
anyway, this is in the 80s. Like, no cell phones, no sat phones. Like, they were gone for weeks. Uh, they had this bucket boat or raft that I now have. And I'm like, I can't imagine taking this down a wilderness river.
Yeah.
Uh, on that trip, they got chased downriver by a wolverine.
Oh man,
They were
that's
just like
awesome.
rowing along through a rapid, and a wolverine just like comes out and starts chasing the boat. Really cool.
Yeah. Have you been up to Skagway?
Hmm.
Whenever I even think about Skagway, I think about the Klondike Gold Rush, and I
Hmm.
think about the people who had to haul a ton of gear up and over the Chilkoot Pass. So they're going up to the top and then sledding back down and then up and down, 15, 20 trips. It's taking weeks to get to the top. And then once you get over, once the Mounties let you in, then you have to build a boat and then float down. So you're not even close. What is it, 100 and some mile float then from there just to get to the gold fields. Unbelievable. And most of those boats were built with green wood. So even if you did try to whatever they used to caulk it, like it was gonna leak, and it was very temporary. And right now I'm like, oh, is there a small leak in my alpaca raft that weighs however many ounces that I can just put in my backpack and my
Yeah.
frame pack. It's wild how pampered we are and what we consider adventure, but I'm okay with it.
Leather shoes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
Wool pants. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, totally, man. One of the things I thought of when you mentioned the Chilkoot is like that's on the Park Service takes care of that, but like we have opportunities here in Southeast Alaska, and the Chilkoot Trail is one of them, just to have like these iconic outdoor adventures that I think can draw people and can bring people here, places where people should come to visit and experience. I think that trail's a great example. Um, what a great story for people to consider the impacts and the consequences of, and to go see it themselves. Um, and Southeast Alaska's recreation network right now is pretty limited to trails up valleys or trails to cabins. And I think, yeah, when we think about the future, I'm like, what would we be ambitious about when it comes to like, maybe an iconic pack raft route from Juneau up the Taku and back down. Stuff on the ice field. Man, we haven't even talked about the ice fields are just so epic here and world class. And right now we got a lot of helicopter traffic annoying people, but boy,
People got
what
to
a
make
what
money.
what a cool experience. Like, yeah, but
Yeah.
like I also can't argue when I've been up there myself in one. Like,
Right.
that's cool.
Yeah. Have you seen The Alpinist?
Mhm.
Whenever I show that to my kids in my adventure survival lit class, and they see the stuff he did down in South America, and they're like, "Man, this guy is crazy! What an incredible person who did it for the sake of doing it." It wasn't about marketing himself, it wasn't about networking, it wasn't about sponsorship. It was about the thing, and that sort of passion in our kind of self promoting
Mm.
lifestyle now. It does not really exist, and so the fact that he unfortunately lost his life in the Mendenhall ice field is pretty, it's a historical thing, and it's dangerous, but like those quests and what he learned from like living that humbly but out loud, that's what so many people want to do. And Alaska exists in a way that many other places don't, and you can have that tranquility, and you can have those really wild experiences, and it's so great for so many people to be able to have that. So even though there's unfortunate accidents, um, it's it kind of is what it is, I guess. But I don't want to sound cold, but
No, I get where you're coming from, I think, and I know that I feel this way about my community here in Juneau, and I don't know if you feel the same way, but like there's so many people here who have a really like beautiful and deep passion for uh, whatever it is about the outdoors that they love, and more than any other place I've been, I think I love that here. I love that I have friends who are big mountaineers, and I'm not because I'm really afraid of heights. But these guys are like running up the ice field, like up the Mendenhall Glacier to do like an ascent of some mountain, world-class alpinist stuff, and um, they don't tell anybody. I mean,
hmm.
they're doing it because that's their thing. I mean, the adventures that people go on here. Um, oh yeah, I just paddled over to this island and walked across it, and then you're like, what?
Hmm.
Incredible stuff. And
Yeah.
and I'm sure it's the same in Ketchikan. Like, there's just silent crushers.
Yeah. It's so inspiring. And some of
Yeah.
the old fishermen who don't talk about it, they don't need to. They don't feel that they're doing anything really worth talking about. And man, that's such a cool thing. And it's so refreshing. But they're even, I'm assuming you've read Into the Wild.
I'll be honest. I have not. I'm
Oh, okay.
familiar with what happens in the
Yeah.
Wild, but
Th-
I'll admit I haven't read it.
there's
You
even,
know what? I looked at that book and I was like, oh, I don't
uh,
know, man.
yeah,
I read Into Thin Air and I was like, I know how this ends. I don't know if I want to watch it.
yeah. The Into the Wild, you're reading it, and there's part of you that wants to have the courage to be able to have that sort of adventure when you're young. And if you didn't have that sort of freedom, if you didn't, whatever that is, it doesn't have to be going to Alaska or hitchhiking around the United States. It doesn't have to be free soloing or anything. Just whatever that adventure is in your mind, and having the stones to be able to pursue it is something that is super inspiring to a lot of people. So a lot of people then left out the unpreparedness, left out the
Hmm. Hmm.
the arrogance, the everything else. And so they want to go to the bus in order to find something. It's like, dude, it's not the bus, man. You don't need to go to the bus to find that adventurous spirit, that freedom, that whatever it is that you're looking for. You don't have to do that. So when people use nature in kind of the transcendentalist, self-discovery, self-challenge, self-reliance sort of way, man, it's such a great place, and I love living here for that. So I don't feel that I have to do extreme things to feel content. Like I don't want to live on the edge of nowhere, but I don't mind kind of seeing it from where I'm at. I'm okay with the luxuries we have here, and it's so nice to be able to have opportunities to get out there as extreme as we want to get, and then other people can share in that too, and it's such an important thing to preserve, to advocate for, and to allow to happen.
Yeah, there's somebody who I'd love to give a shout out to is Luke Mell up in Anchorage, and one of the, I think, most interesting and astounding Alaskan adventurers in the modern era. Um, Up there with cats like Roman Dial and others. Luke has a program that he's, putting his shoulder in right now, which is start and end at home. Um, you want every adventure to end at home.
Right.
You don't, there's no need to stay out there forever. And as I'm getting older too, I really appreciate that. And your other point about how are we going to have that in Alaska going forward is, um, I've been thinking recently that we're sort of on the cusp of a big paradigm shift in Alaska. I just reread Coming Into the Country, um, the classic McPhee tour of Alaska, like right before the oil money started flowing, like right on this shift into sort of modern day Alaska. Um, and it was like, wow, we're really still in the paradigm that oil money unleashed, but it feels like it might be ending. Like things are getting more expensive, our population isn't growing, it's harder to come up and just get rich in a summer. Um, and so what is our vision for the future of Alaska? Is it like, and I think one of the visions I see out there is that it's a resource colony, that you don't need to live here, right? You just let's not invest, let's not waste a bunch of money on like schools and
Mm.
parks and crap. No one needs to live here. Take the stuff. We can all retire happily in Oregon or Hawaii or whatever. And I think that's a dismal view of the state. And the future of Alaska that I want to see is like it's like the best place to live in the world. Uh, we still have amazing hunting and fishing in like huge wild spaces. The conversation is like, well, how much do you need? It's like, I don't know. Like, it's pretty great right now. I love it. Uh, like, I get it. There's going to be resource extraction. Totally understood. Um, but nowhere's got what we got. It's so good. How are we going to have both of those? How are we going to have like universities and um, wild places? How are we going to have cities and villages? Um, it's such a unique way of life, and you don't want to lose it. Like it's part of the diversity of life, and it would be really shitty if Alaska was just like the rest of the lower 48.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, that's not why I moved up here. That's not why people live here. Um, yeah, we want to keep it great. Keep Alaska awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's the universities offering in-state or programs for rural kids to be able to come in, get an education, and that's going to be the key going forward, to have ideas in these remote communities. So how can we leverage our experience? You live here, you don't want to have to go and get a career in the lower 48 because there's nothing around for you. So you come in from wherever you're at, you get educated in ecology, engineering, whatever it is, then you can go back to live where you want to live, but you can help make it better. You're not dependent upon whatever local job might be there. So if you want to leave, cool. If you want to stay, then that's fine. But there's a lot of opportunities that it doesn't have to be just about resource extraction. I know Trout Unlimited has been doing some things with getting guide academies going for local kids, which is awesome. So the kid grew up fishing on the river, and now they get to guide it. And if you're from the lower 48 and you come up and you're spending your money to go with a guide, oh, this kid lives here. This kid grew up here. You know, that's a great thing to have. Nothing against out-of-state guides. But, man, if you can have a rural kid who grew up here as your guide, what a fantastic thing to have. So, getting the kind of the start to finish opportunities for these kids to stay here. They have a vested interest in, and they kind of know what's going on here. And then, invite people from the lower 48 who want, like yourself, who want to have the adventure and want to have a career and help preserve and make it better, rather than, like you said, just come up here, extract, and then leave.
Yeah, I'll say two things. One about local kids and one about kids who didn't grow up here like me. I got to work on one of those guide academy projects, and I did a trip, and my co-guide, one of the students, and it was so cool. It was so cool, the different perspective, depth of experience this kid brought to the trip. But also, I was like, this is the fishiest kid I've ever met, right? Like, I love fishing. I was like, I don't love fishing as much as this kid does. Like, this kid could just like do nothing but fish. It was really cool. I've lived in Alaska for a little bit now, but I did grow up. I did grow up in the lower 48. And I do think there's maybe a point like worth saying about like, what are you doing here telling us how to do things? I come from a place where you can't eat the fish. I grew up fishing creeks that were oily, rip-wrapped, garbage, pulling out little perch and bluegills and trying to find stock trout, and knowing I wasn't going to ever eat one.
Right.
And I am here to tell you it's better here.
Yeah, we need that perspective too. Like when tourists are appreciating bald eagles for like locals, it's like, oh yeah, man. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, they're great.
Of course.
I forget all the time, but they are great.
Yeah, we definitely need that perspective because we can kind of lose track of that. So that fresh perspective, that enthusiasm that might wane a little bit or we might forget is really important. Kind of in closing here, how can people get a hold of, follow, support SalmonState?
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that opportunity. Yeah, we're on Instagram. We're online, SalmonState AK. We're going to be talking about a lot of different issues that our team works on. I'm going to be working on the forest plan. I've got a group called the Tongass Recreation Partnership that I also pitched some time in with, and thinking about what does outdoor recreation look like in the future. Folks are welcome to search us out, get on our website, and get in touch if they want to be involved. And it's hard. It's hard to make time in our busy lives for things as complicated and far off as forest planning. I'm always grateful anytime someone does. So that's very appreciated.
Awesome. Well, thanks, man. Appreciate you being on here. Thanks for the work that you're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Enjoyed the conversation. Good visiting with you.
Yeah, see you. Thanks for listening. Please share. If you found today's conversation useful, you can go deeper with my writing on Substack. That's where I expand on these ideas from the show, share essays, reporting, and things I'm thinking about in real time. You can find it at From the 49th on Substack. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.